I watched her tiny shoulders slump as the doorbell stayed silent for the third time. My 12-year-old daughter had been buzzing with excitement, waiting for her friends to show up at her birthday party. And nobody came. Not a single soul. The balloons swayed in an empty living room. The cake sat untouched, and the laughter I had promised her never arrived. I felt my chest tighten, a mix of heartbreak and fury coursing through me. That's when I realized some lessons can only be learned the hard way. If you've ever felt dismissed, undervalued, or completely overlooked, hit that subscribe button, like this video, and get ready to witness a story where justice isn't just served, it's carefully, brilliantly orchestrated. And don't forget to comment below, because I want to hear your thoughts on taking a stand when the world ignores you. Let's dive in. It all started weeks before my daughter's birthday. I had spent countless hours planning the perfect party for her. She was turning 12, an age filled with wonder, curiosity, and dreams. She had been counting down the days, marking each one on her little calendar, and telling anyone who would listen about the celebration she imagined. I wanted it to be magical. Invitations were hand-delivered with glittery envelopes. The decorations were carefully chosen to match her favorite pink and purple theme, and the cake, a triple-layer chocolate masterpiece, was scheduled to arrive fresh on the morning of her birthday. I even spent the night before rehearsing little games and surprises, imagining the joy on her face. The morning of the party, my daughter twirled in her pink dress, hair neatly braided, eyes sparkling with anticipation. She practically danced from room to room, checking the clock and running to the door every time she heard a car. I felt a pang of pride and happiness. This was the moment I had worked for. And then, nothing. No doorbell, no texts, no calls. I could feel the tension in the room grow heavier with every passing minute. My daughter's excitement slowly dissolved into confusion, then disappointment. She kept looking out the window, hoping that anyone would appear, but the street stayed empty. I tried to hide my panic with a forced smile, but my stomach twisted with helplessness and anger. By noon, she sat at the table, poking at the untouched cake, attempting to pretend she was having fun. Her tiny hands trembled slightly as she lifted her fork, and I could see the quiet heartbreak in her eyes. I swallowed hard, fighting to keep my emotions in check. The injustice of it all, our careful plans, our excitement, our love being met with nothing. It was almost unbearable. I tried to rationalize it at first. Maybe something came up, I told myself. Maybe someone forgot. But the rationalizations quickly evaporated when, a week later, the truth hit like a punch in the chest. An invitation arrived from my own mother to my niece's sweet 17, a $3,200 extravaganza complete with a professional DJ, photographers, and a giant inflatable unicorn. And the tone? Cheerful, casual, oblivious. No acknowledgement of the disaster that had been my daughter's birthday. I stared at that invitation, my hands shaking. The unfairness burned deep. My daughter had sat alone, staring at an untouched cake, while my mother threw herself into a lavish celebration for her own child. The contrast was glaring, humiliating, and utterly infuriating. I felt a storm rising inside me, a mix of rage and resolve. My mind raced, considering every possible reaction. But this wasn't about blind anger, it was about control. I realized that sometimes people need a sharp, unforgettable lesson to understand boundaries, and I was going to give one. For 2 nights, I lay awake, plotting, imagining scenarios, calculating risks. The plan had to be perfect. It had to send a message without breaking the law. That's when I decided I would reclaim my home, assert my boundaries, and let my mother experience a fraction of the frustration and helplessness she had so carelessly inflicted. Step 1. Change the locks. She had a spare key, and I knew she wouldn't expect me to take action. Step 2. Block numbers. Step 3. Wait. Let the realization sink in. The next morning, I executed my plan. I changed the locks. Every key she possessed was now useless. I blocked her phone and those of my siblings who might try to intervene. I felt a strange thrill, a calm certainty. For the first time, the power was entirely in my hands. 2 days later, the inevitable happened. The phone rang not with her voice, but with a police officer on the line. My heart raced. I took a deep breath and calmly explained the situation, No threats, no vandalism, no trespassing, simply a woman exercising her right to control access to her own home. The officer listened patiently, nodded, and then delivered words that made my chest lift. "You were within your rights," he said. "Sometimes people just need to learn boundaries the hard way." I hung up, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace. I sat in my quiet house, watching my daughter play with her slightly squished birthday balloons. She laughed, small but genuine. And I realized that justice wasn't about cruelty, it was about balance. My daughter's disappointment hadn't vanished, but the world had acknowledged, in its own way, that she deserved better. The ripple effects were subtle but undeniable. My mother, accustomed to unquestioned access and attention, had to pause. She had to reflect. For the first time, she understood that respect is earned, not demanded. And for my daughter, she learned an invaluable lesson. Sometimes, adults fail you, but you can still stand up, protect what's yours, and demand fairness. A week later, my mother arrived at the door, flustered, frustrated, and for the first time, humbled. She couldn't get in. No keys, no phone contact, no workarounds. She knocked lightly, called out my name, and eventually, with a sigh, left. I didn't feel the satisfaction of gloating. What I felt was calm triumph. The satisfaction of justice delivered without cruelty. The lesson had landed. Actions have consequences. Disrespect, favoritism, and neglect don't go unnoticed forever. That evening, my daughter hugged me tightly. "Mom, I'm glad you stood up for me," she whispered. And in that embrace, I understood the true victory. Her trust, her restored faith in fairness, and the affirmation that even in a world full of dismissive people, we can claim our power and dignity. Life isn't fair. People aren't always kind or thoughtful. But true justice isn't about vengeance, it's about balance. Reclaiming your power and teaching lessons that resonate. Standing firm, setting boundaries, and protecting those you love can be the most powerful, poetic revenge of all. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button, share it with someone who's ever been underestimated, and subscribe for more tales of clever, real-life justice. And in the comments, tell me what's the most satisfying act of standing up for yourself you've ever witnessed. I can't wait to read your stories.